protect the patient. I think that's why
difficult situation for the patient as well as for the surgeon. Now, if you look at PJI, or periprosthetic joint infection, it definitely is a challenging and dreadful complication. And if you look at the data available in detail, most of them are surgeon factors evaluate or to narrate to you the diagnosis and evaluation of periprosthetic joint infections. This is a landmark paper that was brought out in 2013 with 300 people involved from 300 countries that were involved and 52 delegates who put together this consensus criteria. And Parvizi, who's been a person who's been describing the criteria and redoing them every year, has put out this in 2018, where he's put out a clear table as to how you go about dealing with the criteria in, at least according to the European group and others. You have the acute PJI that is seen within 4 weeks, and then you have the chronic one that is seen after 4 weeks of surgery. And this can also be brought about by all the rare organisms that we currently have threshold values in the acute scenario and in the chronic scenario. And that, I think the next stage, whether it is a patient who's in sepsis or not, is a joint aspiration. Now, when you undertake a joint aspiration, the fluid has to be sent for all the parameters that need to establish your diagnosis. And one thing to remember about the joint aspiration, it has to be done under strict aseptic precautions. The last thing we want to do is introduce infection into the joint. So if it is a hip, it has to be done under image guidance. If leukocytes and synovial fluid, periprosthetic tissue histology and microbiology put together have a very high degree of specificity so as to diagnose the joint infection. What value is the Gram stain? Gram stain is still of value in the Staph aureus infections as literature has shown. What are the other parameters? We have procalcitonin in the diagnosis of actual marker. It is an alpha defensive that might be a good marker. As stress, definitely no. Alpha defensive are definitely not of much value. Why to be seen? They have established, at least under the MSIs, that is more than 5 neutrophils per histochemistry. Adding CD15, you can see either 23 of these cells in 10 when you have prolonged cultures that are required, especially when there is no growth that is seen. Now, the consensus document that has come out in the latest European journals have also brought about the evaluation or the importance of the bone scan. And the bone scan might be useful, or the PET scan, as they call it, the FB or FDG PET scan, which may be useful in diagnosing these infections. But if you say, if possible, joint aspiration and histology, and if nothing works, wait for a short duration of time, which is 3 to 4 weeks, and then redo the joint aspiration. So, criteria are to be strictly adhered to.
Picture like this. Now, the definition is basically based on certain CRP, elevated synovial leukocyte count, elevated synovial neutrophil percentage, presence of purulence in the corpuscles in the affected joint, isolation of microorganisms, that the criteria has become so stringent now. Now it's very important to remember whether it is early, delayed or late. And there is probably one more thing, next one which is coming up, is whether it is acute or chronic. I mean, early one is something which happens within 3 months. Patient factors as well, RA, diabetes, transplant patients, retrovirus patients, urine or on the skin. Psoriatic patients typically harbor MRSA into their, which is negative, in a patient where we feel there is an infection. So 2 weeks of antibiotic holiday, the antibiotics. Now certain organisms like Staph and Pseudomonas are very prone to produce a biofilm for their own protection. This is a resection arthroplasty or sometimes even an amputation. Now before starting the treatment, we need to know whether it is deep or superficial, acute or chronic. Now time elapsed since the development of infection and commencement of treatment. How is the soft tissue around? What is the extensor apparatus? Quite often there may be avulsion of the patellar tendon and you may be perhaps better off performing an arthrodesis. Is the implant loose or well fixed? Is the patient having any pain or not having any pain? What are the pathogens you have identified? And get the help of infectious specialists right from early on. Now antibiotic suppression cannot actually eliminate the infection. But sometimes it is okay when the patient is very old, he is not in a lot of pain, and the prosthesis removal is not necessarily possible. If you've got already done a 2 or a 3 stage surgically. Open debridement and change of liner is possible if it is an acute injury. Remove all the loose or other removable implants, like there is a liner or you can remove that. Antibiotic stimulant delivery system is very useful in such a case, and intravenous antibiotics for up to 6 weeks may be required. Quite often, when we used to, before the advent of biofilm, when we used to remove the liner, we used to see some infective tissue granulation inside these holes. And I used to wonder if the insert was so stable, from where it has really gone. So it basically indicates that biofilm can be formed even in a stable looking implant. When you see this over here, quite often, even if the femur and the tibia is well cemented, you still maybe having a membrane behind it. And if this particular infection is kind of more than a month or two old, you are better off removing the implant as well. Infected tissue is removed and new implant with your culture report. After the surgery, 4 to 6 weeks of antibiotics are required, and it's something which is very safe. One removes all the implant and cement in the first stage, removes granulation tissue, removes the infected material, and uses either a mobile or a stable the insert, a spacer for some time to keep the limb length and put a final implant in antibiotic cement. IV
and we have a choice how I make my spacers. So this first slide in fact actually shows my journey in hip. That's what my spacers have changed. This is the surgeon's nightmare, as he showed some knee x-rays. These are a couple of them, how they end up, they can come back to you, haunt you, and this is when you want to do something. We wanted to discuss the criteria, so I'm not going to go into the details from the Parvezi's paper. Comes to the choice of spacers. Static spacers, non-articulating, temporary. Dynamic are articulating with minimum range of motions. It all depends on the amount of bone loss that you have. I will elaborate on this bone loss also in the subsequent slides. Condition of the soft tissues, need for joint motion, availability of prefabricated spacers. I will touch on the prefabricated spacers as well, and of course the antibiotic selection. What is the goal? Local delivery of antibiotics, maintain the joint space, reduce my soft tissue contractures, and of course provide some minimum range of motion. Antibiotic interim spacers, we have a literature support going all the way from Insal when he described this two-stage revision in 1983, all the way, a lot of papers all talking of this spacers. Two-stage revision, this is one of the photograph I picked up when he talked on this paper, and it talks of 95% infection-free, better outcome in spacer groups. Cement spacers, we are looking at local antibiotic delivery in high doses. Little effect on the serum or urine level. This was very important when I started off. My resident would say KFT itna hai. And we would start looking at the anesthetic would say, sir, KFT itna hai, creatine itna hai. And then we had to really convince them also that there is little non-articulating mobile. Advantages again we just discussed that it maintains the joint shaft as a local made design available with us. We basically we're talking of local delivery of the antibiotic. Any antibiotic which we can use and talk on the heat stable antibiotics and the broad spectrums. Pelacos, my cement in revisions is mostly Pelacos because of the better eluting property and a high porosity and easy molding into the endoprocesses. That's what the tissue lengthening. You can maintain the length of the tissue with the spacer inside. Like this is a 54-year-old lady got a bipolar done, got infected, came to us, and that's the spacer that I made, put it inside. That's when it was retained later on, and subsequently got a surgery. The thing is, we are able to get away with a lot of in the hips when we have these spacers. This is a picture that I picked up. This is what they are trying to make. It has an endoskeleton, and on top of it you can get a cement. We have this normal block available with us. We just build our K-wires and everything in it, and you get this kind of a spacer. This is the custom-made spacers which are available, and these are the endoskeletons inside they have. I just cut it just to show it to you. And that's what we started off, and we would put that spacer which I just showed you inside. But I was always very unhappy with these spacers. The reason being, you want some length. Now look at this particular gentleman has a hollow cavity here. We've taken out all this, whatever went inside, and this spacer is too small there. Most of the spacer complications would end up because of these reasons. This is one of the patient. This is the patient actually who set us thinking. This patient had a bipolar done for some reason. He had a ipsilateral neck, a shaft. They fixed him up. It didn't fix, got infected. They put a plate and it got infected, and he landed up to us in this kind of a scenario. We took him inside. We had to do something. When we removed everything, it was a long space to fill up. So this was the masala nail thing, the K nail, we just bent it, made it into a masala nail kind of a thing, and all that ETO and everything, and then we just packed it inside. And on top, we put a bolus of cement into the canal and fixed that end of the masala nail into it. And that was our custom made spacer there for this whole patient, because then I had the whole length going in. And we ended up well, we removed that whole thing and put a reef on it later on, which became very easy for us. Coming to Prostalac hip, which is a prosthesis with antibiotic loaded cement, again we know a lot about it. A patient here, again the Prostalac led me to started to think what I need to do. So this patient came to us infected, and this is what we did. I learned it, I picked it up from Australia. Ross does it a number of times, TV technique. Now, this is an original implant. It's an original cemented component at the top, stem down, and poorly cemented. We get so many times from our in our OPD cemented hips done elsewhere, and you say about poor cementing. So if that poor cementing technique can be used here, so why not? And this is when we retained it. You can see the long stem with that cement on top. We just did this kiwi technique, and now I can tell you this is my journey. Now my hip spacers all my kiwi technique. Poorly cemented hips, you can retain them. A 69-year-old female came in infected bipolar. We went ahead and we did this kiwi technique. And look at this. This is a poor cementing bipolar. Just a poor cementing done. You were able to just knock it off and do a routine in the subsequent stage. These are silicone molded implant molds. These are available. Endoskeletal metallic rod. I just touched on it. This is what you do with them. Put a doughy cement, and you can either put your bent K-nail, bent wire, whatever into it, pressurize, contour, and you get a final contoured spacer. So that's what you're trying to do, but basically local antibiotic delivery. The best part is that once you either do a poor cementing or a spacer, you can actually just knock them off here. You really don't need to do anything. It's just simple. You clear out the lateral side, remove the small soft tissue debris on it, and you can, most of the times, you can even really pull them out with their hand, but they were still doing their job, and then you're out with it. This is from the Biomed, but they have the molds available, and that's my journey when I just said. I shifted using the prefabricated because I did not have an antibiotic. The motion, bone loss, quadriceps, abductor shortening, to articulating spacers, people talking of advantages of greater range of motion, decreased bone loss, and weight bearing was allowed. This is from one of the headache that was on Prostalac. But again, metal, poly, cement, all of this again, and we started using the prefabricated ones. The prefabricated cements, they were very comfortable. I still use them in my knees most of the times. But I play around more with my Palapus cement. I play around more with the antibiotic that I want to put inside. Copal knee molds are available, I don't use it. Again, for the same reason that I don't really find a justification. I'll show you why. Because these ready-made molds are available in 3 sizes, small, medium, large. Most of my knees I can manage off with that. And my preferred combination, again from the literature, it's either 2.4 grams of tobramycin or vancomycin, 40 grams cement. It's all there in the book, so I really don't need to go. But what we're looking at is 8 grams of antibiotics. Are you up to 8 grams? You can mix in a 40 gram of bone cement is the highest ratio. I normally play around with 3 or 4 grams in one packet. And the FDA approved a lot of, somebody in the morning was talking of smart set as well. They all have come and gone. So what we are looking at is they may be used prophylactically in high-risk patients. But when you are talking of revision scenarios, it is better to get your own, add your own cement depending on the antibiotic sensitivity that you have. The antibiotic that you want to use in these stages would be heat stable, water soluble, broad spectrum. Mostly if you have a gram policy, the spacer can break, dislocate. Like in this particular 56-year-old female who was operated 3 times before she landed up, and this was the position. And you can see the implant was loose when she came to us. That's what we did. That was it. In the hindsight, I'm going back actually, she had a good range of motion when she came back with her spacer. And this is with the spacer on, she had a good range of motion. So we thought, okay, we went ahead, and this lady actually in the second stage, she was financially challenged, and this was before NPPA days. So we put all those blocks ahead to save on some money. We did the revision, and that was her at post-operative. when she came back at 6 weeks with her range of motion, and we were pretty happy, pretty satisfied with the range of motion. Probably was able to walk and all. I'm just actually elaborating for some reason, and that reason is 66-year-old male who came to us. We ended up using these molds. I want to elaborate on the use of these molds, and these molds is small, medium, large. Even if you're manufacturing or making them all, he came back to us with a dislocation. There was no infection, no flare-up at 1 month, but he dislocated. And we ended up putting some wire, using a slightly bigger mold, and stabilized his, and intraoperative he was stable enough, you can see the bend. And this was when he came back for his revision. But why I am showing you this is the study from hindsight. If you look at this here, there was a notch and this size was probably less. Over the time now we've realized that if you want to do it, probably you have to set it better there. You can probably put a mold of cement mold there or a bigger size, and that will actually work better. And then you can actually knock them out very easily without really having any bone loss, and they just come out well. So dream. You will find
Costly spaces, and I recommend Mahajan's advice making best of your own spacer. No doubt, it's temporarily replaces a total joint that has been explanted due to recontour the femoral stem, remove the femoral component, and remove the tibial one. You can recontour the femoral one and the venting technique, and that is reduction, and that is the infected knee where removed and prefabricated cement used. You look at this knee when the mobility part of this one, I don't know, it's not playing. Okay, you will have definitely in this case 0 to 90 degrees of flexion, and you can revise that one to the constrained knee when you opt, that's the follow-up. And same thing, just now we saw the slides, these spacers also can dislocate from their place. And no doubt, the good study once again, gentamicin and combination of vanco and colistin, the combination of local antimicrobials could be useful for the treatment of multi-drug resistant prosthetic joint infections, no doubt. Thank you very much for this.